Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I am phenomenally proud to be speaking with folks who are involved with the latest masterpiece by Zontar Press called Ancient Artifacts. And we have, of course, Tim Swartz, who wrote most of the book and published it. And then we have Paul Dale Richards, who is an awesome individual who's been in the exploration of psychic phenomena game for a very long time. He grew up in a haunted house, and he wrote two excellent articles for this book. So welcome, gentlemen, and thank you very much for being here. Tim, how did this book come into being?
Well, thank you, Hercules, and I appreciate you bringing myself and Paul Roberts on. The book is called Alien Artifacts, and I'll just hold it up here. You know, there it is. Blatant plug for Alien Artifacts. Incredible evidence of exotic material from UFO encounters. Yes, Hercules has his copy,
Yes.
and I know that that Paul has his. You know, the back cover, I have Alien Artifacts. It's more than just crashed flying saucers. And that was what we were wanting to do with this book, is that, you know, I mean, oh my gosh, I mean, you know, who knows how many books there are out there, you know, about maybe, you know, the Roswell crash or just crash saucers in general. And while it's an interesting topic, you know, it's really been done quite a bit. So I wanted to go out there a little bit more and, you know, look at different things that could be associated with the UFO phenomenon, you know, things that, you know, not only the little bits of fiddly bits of metal, but, you know, you've got we've got the alien pancake story. We have the story from Japan of schoolboys actually capturing a miniature UFO. You know, Paul has an article about angel hair. You know, not necessarily, you know, chunks of metal. And then, you know, we also examine ancient artifacts. You know, you referred to that at the beginning of this, that, you know, there's been a number of fascinating artifacts that have been found at you know, levels underground that as far as we know, there weren't any humans around yet. You know, here's these absolutely, you know, marvelous pieces of worked metal that, you know, I mean, you know, we could speculate extraterrestrial, previous civilization here. Who knows? That's the thing that I point out in the book. Alien Artifacts is that alien doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial. Alien is referring to something that is out of the ordinary, extraordinary, so you would say. But you know, I got a lot of great writers to participate in this book, yourself included, Hercules, Paul Dale Roberts, Sean Castile, Scott Corrales, Diane Tessman, Nigel Watson, and Mark Ollie from the UK. So it's really been a great pleasure putting this book together, and I think that you know, people who read this book, I mean, they're going to learn a lot that possibly they hadn't known about before. You know, because right now the popular press is, when they do talk about, say, exotic materials or meta materials, that the Army is possibly examining some that have been collected over the years. But again, we're talking about chunks of metal, which, you know, we've heard about time and again. And, you know, it seems like that once they disappear behind those doors with the military, that you never really hear too much about it again. But that's where our book comes in, because we've got a lot of cases where these materials have been rigorously examined in laboratories, and the results are always fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of fascinating material in the book, and I'm dying to find out more about the angel hair. I've only come across angel hair associated with a description of angels or
Mhm.
creatures like that. But you make some very good points. There are worked metal objects that are in rocks that are very old. You know, we can't explain how they got there. There are sandal tracks with stitching next to dinosaur tracks, and we can't explain how they got over there. And in antiquity, if you look at the myths and if you look at some of the folklore, you have, like in Greece, for instance, which I'm most familiar with, you have Talos, who's a robot who patrolled the shores of ancient Crete and protected the palace of Minos. You have Hephaestus with his forge on Lemnos, and he had robot women who were golden in color doing work for him. And he had Cyclopses too, who were blacksmiths. So you have all these tales. And as we look at things with new eyes through all the reality bending information we've been getting from the ancient alien community, you begin to see things differently. So what was thought to be a bird is very clearly an aircraft now, you know, because we have aircrafts. Back when they identified it, they didn't. What looked like a makeup mirror in a frieze in Greece, now you can see very clearly a USB port on it. So it looks like a laptop. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So the book is, even though it's been, the topic has been kicked around a bit, the book offers very many fresh perspectives. And you seem to focus on something I haven't seen before. There are biohazards may be involved in this whole phenomenon. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yes, it sounds like something taken from, like an old science fiction novel, War of the Worlds. That's an excellent example where the invading Martians are eventually killed by Earth's pathogens. And it had been kicked around, gosh, I mean, as far back as the late 1940s, when the UFO phenomena really, blazed forth, that there there were rumors of crash saucers, maybe even as far back as the Roswell incident, that people who were part of the recovery or living in the general vicinity of where these crashes occurred seemed to suffer symptoms, sometimes extreme symptoms like death. Can't get much more extreme than that. After exposure to crash saucers, some of the debris fields, things like that. There were reports of in a town near Corona, New Mexico, and areas like that, that a few months later, there were a series of mysterious flu-like illnesses that actually killed especially youngsters, babies. Uh, but we have, unexplained flu-like illnesses cropping up all the time. So, it's an interesting connection. I also looked into and Hercules. I would I have no idea how you pronounce the city in Brazil. Let me go to my notes here.
Are you talking about the Campinas, Brazil?
No, the one where the it started out with the girls seeing the alien crouched up against a fence. And let me just, it's one of these names that as you work with it, you just kind of bleep over it in your mind. You know how to spell it, but as for pronouncing it, but anyway, this case, allegedly, this creature and maybe several others were captured by the fire brigade, police, and then eventually the military. And there was one soldier who allegedly came into close contact with this creature. He had grabbed it by its wrist and then held it in his arms until they could get him subdued and taken to the hospital to who knows whatever happened to him. Okay. Varginha, Brazil. Varginha.
And that creature actually looked like he was scared when he was all crouched down like that. It was
Right. Yeah. And that was, the little girls, that was one of the things that they commented on, was that this creature was huddled up against this fence and just, appeared to be terrified. But yeah, there was one, a corporal, Marco Eli Shirez, one of the military police, that captured and touched with his bare hands the living creature. He very soon afterwards, he had to go underwent surgery to remove a small tumor from his armpit. And from that point on, he just never recovered. He quickly succumbed to his illness and passed away. And the cardiologist who worked with his case felt like possibly he had been exposed to some kind of unknown bacteria that had attacked various tissues in his body, including his heart, and possibly even penetrating the blood-brain wall. So yeah, that's one of a number of cases that we look at in this book, Hercules.
Now, Paul, it looks like you know a lot more about this case that Tim brought up. Would you care to expand the picture a bit or share your understanding of it?
Well, Tim really explained everything about it. What it just really resonates in my mind is I felt sorry for that alien. They even drew a picture of him as he was crouched down. And he looked from that drawing that he was terrified. So I feel his pain, this creature's pain. And there's so many things, with Tim's book, the evidence is all around us. There is, it's like so much in that book. It's like an encyclopedia of artifacts. And one of the things that really got my attention is a case I remembered, and it's in the book. And it's Stefan Mitch, if I can spell it right, say it right.
We're both doing great on saying things.
Mitch Lock or something like that.
Like
anyway,
Michalak, I think.
Yeah, Michalak. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Tim. And he had all these burn marks on his stomach because he approached this UFO, and some kind of ventilator on the UFO blew out something, and he was marked all over his stomach. That is evidence right there. It's the evidence. There's ancient evidence. There's evidence in the present times. And this book is just like covering it all.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive, and what I like is it's a wide selection. It doesn't attempt to provide one unified theory, but it shows you multiple facets of a phenomenon that is pretty common, to show that there's a rich variety of evidence, but there's also more to this than we can conclude currently. And that's a healthy way to approach these type of topics. Now, Paul, before the show started, I had asked you a question, so I'll ask you again. How did you start in your life of paranormal investigations?
When I was a child, I lived in a haunted house. The entities in that house, they centered everything on me. A lot of terrible things were happening to me. And as I grew older, I wanted to know if those were childhood nightmares or did I really witness something paranormal. So I started reading all kinds of books by Brad Steiger, Eric von Däniken. I started getting into ancient aliens and UFOs and everything else. Plus, I moved over to Monterey, and Monterey Bay is known to have UFO activity going in and out of the Monterey Bay. So a lot of people believe there's a UFO base over there. So I've been around the paranormal all my life. And so I just always had that keen interest in the phenomenon.
And how did your path bring you to Zontar Press and Tim Swartz?
I think through Brad Steiger, because I was reading Brad Steiger's books when I was a little boy.
Me
Then
too.
my articles wind up being in Brad Steiger's books. And I think that's how I met Timothy Beckley. And thank you, Hercules, for having this show and promoting Timothy beyond the grave. So, and then also to Tim Shorts, I mean, dedicating that book to Tim, that was just beautiful. So yeah, I've always been interested in the paranormal.
And you wrote, if I'm not mistaken, you wrote 2 chapters for this book, one of them on angel hair. So can you share a little bit about what you found and what you wrote in the article?
Well, I became really curious about angel hair because when I was living in Fresno, California, there was an incident that happened in 1964 where all this white silky stuff came from the sky and landed on the grass. And as I was playing with it, it actually dissolved. And the newspapers and news reports were trying to say that they were spider webs and that came from some spider. And I just didn't believe that because spider webs don't really dissolve. So that's when I became really curious about angel hair. Then I found all kinds of different books on angel hair and other people who have experienced it. And it seems like when a UFO is seen, somehow it deposits this strange substance, which we know as angel hair.
So were there any tales associated with the angel's hair? Like, did anybody see anything in the area?
My neighbors, the incident in 1964, my neighbors, they witnessed it, they saw it. They had no idea what it was. Some people actually did believe that it was spider webs, but I'm not buying it.
Must have been huge spiders, lots of them too,
Yeah.
for the wind to come and blow their dissolving webs away.
Oh yeah. And I got to ask Tim something. In his book, he talks about the lunium wedge that they found. And some people theorize that that wedge was part of a landing foot of a UFO. And it's ancient. And we didn't have lunium during those times, those ancient times. So where did it come from?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was uncovered in Romania. They had first uncovered bones of prehistoric creatures related to like modern day rhinoceros is what it was. But underneath these bones, they found this huge, I mean, it's pretty good sized, maybe, about a foot long, a foot across. It's a metallic wedge as it's described. And there's a photo of it in the book, but it's made of aluminum. Now, of course, this was discovered in a part of the dirt that would have made it approximately 220,000 years ago. That's when it was on the surface. So as far as we know, nobody was around smelting aluminum, which is not that easy. It's not something that you just get in large quantities in nature. You really have to work with the rocks surrounding the ore to get it out. So, as you said, Paul, some people have speculated that it's the landing gear of an alien spaceship. And of course, I always have to go and, be that guy to say that okay, yeah, it could be a lot of, a lot of things. I mean, you're really kind of carrying that, grabbing that ball and running with it, maybe a little bit past the goalpost with that theory. However, there's no denying that this is a very unusual artifact, and similar to other apparently man-made or something made artifacts that have been found buried at depths that there would have been no way that, as far as we know, that there were people on this planet. So, again, alien artifacts, that's what we're striving to do in this book, is to bring you all these. And as you said, Paul and Hercules, I mean, we have a diverse amount of information just to demonstrate that when it comes to alien artifacts and strange things that seem to fall from the sky or are found buried in the ground or have left marks on people's bodies, there's no easy explanations. And I doubt if there's going to be like a unified field of explanation, one singular explanation for these things, because the phenomena is just so different with almost every aspect. There aren't a lot of similarities. The only similarity, I think, with these cases is that they're just totally bizarre.
And Tim, I got to tell you, okay, there was two other parts of your book that really caught my attention, because I actually experienced something like that. I've been to Costa Rica. I've seen those strange balls. I mean, they come in all sizes. Where in the heck? I mean, when I looked at those, I go, where in the heck did those come from? What was the purpose of those spears? That is just like, it blew me away. And they're all over Costa Rica. I mean, in the jungles and everything. Some, like the hotel I was staying at, they actually had two of the spears in front of their doors. So they actually moved them over there. And I asked many people from Costa Rica, where do they think those spears came from? And they all think that somehow UFOs brought them here. So it blew me away. And then another thing, the section in your book, you talk about saucer nests. Well, when I went on Route 66 with my father, we stopped at the Oklahoma Route 66 Museum. And the guy that worked there said that they had a UFO that landed out in the desert out there. And there was a circular thing. He showed us a picture. It was a circular thing in the dirt. And he said it was made by a UFO. And saucer nests are seen everywhere. Like where I'm from, I'm here in Sacramento, we had a crop circle saucer nest type thing in Fairfield, California. So yeah, that's some type of alien artifact.
Yeah, the Stone Spheres of Costa Rica article was written by Sean Castile, and he did an excellent job with this article. But yeah, you're right. Now the spheres are generally made of volcanic rock, which, I mean, while being really, really hard, can be carved, not easy, especially if you're considering whether or not the people in Costa Rica who originally made these stones had metal instruments, but there's a possibility that they didn't, as far as we know from the archaeological record. And second of all, we're not even sure just exactly who made these spheres. It's extremely difficult. You can't really say like carbon date rock, and they've got like other dating processes, and I mean it goes all over the place from like 1000 BC to 1000 Common Era. So we're just not really sure who constructed these spheres and for what purpose. You know, as you said, there are thousands of them scattered across the countryside, and you know, it seems like every year they, you know, floods and things like that will uncover more. So you know, it's a wonderful mystery, and just a really good one to have in our book. Um, the the other part that you were talking about, and I forgot,
Oscar Ness?
the saucer nest. You know, that's the one that we addressed was the one that took place in Tully, Australia, and this made one of the few UFO stories that actually made the headlines all across the world. But yeah, after some farmers saw a UFO near this swamp, they went out to investigate and found these, you know, it was almost like if you would take a cookie cutter and just go into the reeds in this swamp and pull it up. That's what you were left with, this almost cut out version where something apparently had landed. And then the reeds in the water underneath were swirled in, I think it was a clockwise pattern. So, you know, the saucer nests are very similar to the early crop circles, but, you know, the more recent examples of crop circles are a lot more abstract and works of art, while the saucer nests are basically just usually round indentations found at various locations, you know, all across the planet.
And
one
those are
crop
sometimes, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. One crop circle in England, it had binary code, and it had an actual depiction of what looked like a grave. So that was very unusual.
And in other parts of the world, like in Europe, the fairy literature is tied around those type of circles and designs in the grain and so forth. And I know in Greece, like my chapter might seem puzzling to some, but what I'm exploring now, and I've been exploring for quite a while, there's a wide body of information. Some of it has been published, some of it you need to eventually meet the right people who share the information with you. But it takes into account the parts of the phenomena that may behave physically for a little while, but they're not physical phenomenon. Things appear and disappear. They leave footprints or samples, but nothing ever, you know, conclusive and so forth. And in this literature and in this lore, there are objects that you get through various practices. So I described as best I could my way of getting a particular item, and because I've experimented with this for a very long time before, the colors and the gemstones and so forth had meaning previously, which I perhaps didn't do such a great job of like fleshing it out. But those things they work on what is commonly called the astral plane. Now, the astral plane is where you dream. The astral plane is where your imagination is. You know, so it's a very fluid, plastic realm. It's not unreal. Like if you look around you, wherever you are, our language is a product of imagination. Everything we're surrounded with is somebody's imagination, and then we kind of collage it together by collecting a bunch of stuff and using our imagination, you know, to create our environment with these objects. So the imagination is a phenomenally powerful thing. And dreams too, you can train yourself to become lucid in dreams. And then that opens up doors to all sorts of weirdness. Have either of you ever experimented with lucid dreams?
Well, I've had a few.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff too. I truly believe in the Akashic records.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything that we think about, that we talk about, what we see, and everything else is all recorded and placed into an energy field, as we know as the Akashic records.
Right. Yeah, I dealt with the Akashic records a little bit, and how it appears differently, so you can think it's different places, but actually it's the same place. It's just some part of you clothes it differently or arranges it differently, depending where you happen to be. And sometimes whatever part of you creates these structures and allows you to access them reverts to old form. So you get something you haven't gotten in a while, and it still functions the same way, but on a less technological level. So I could see how some people can perceive fairies in like a fairyland, and then somebody else perceive a UFO. And on the show, as we've had it, we have several people who are regulars who experience these realms in a particular way. And lately, what I've been trying to do is to get them, instead of not listening to what somebody else is saying who sees the world differently, to pay attention, like getting rid of the Tower of Babel, where everyone's saying the same thing, but it's in a different language. It's the same thing with the metaphysical languages too. People can be talking about the exact same thing, but because they've bought into different interpretation systems, they wind up arguing and closing each other off. So I'm trying to develop like a universal language of the paranormal, I guess, so that whether it manifests as a UFO with high technology or whether it manifests as dwarves and goblins, what actually happened. And I could give one quick example, shadows. Now, shadows are very much experienced by people everywhere. And I think in every single talk I've ever given since the 70s, it's very rare that somebody doesn't come and tell me a shadow story afterwards. And the shadows behave consistently. They're shadows. You wake up and you could feel a presence in the room. And it usually tells you to go back to sleep, everything's okay. And most of the time you go back to sleep because it told you to. And then you wonder why you did that. And sometimes they get sexual. People hear like heavy breathing, and they'll have some sort of sexual advances that leave them paralyzed and so forth. So the MO of this is the same, and anywhere you go, it's the same MO. But some people will tell you it's an incubus or a succubus because they have that whole mythology. Other people will say it's a UFO being, and they'll point to all these stories where UFO beings did the same way. Some people will say it's satyrs, because in ancient times in Greek mythology, satyrs did this, or if you were from Italy, the Folletti did it. So you have all this folklore around the Folletti. Now we know about jinn, so there's all sorts of jinn folklore, that supports this type of behavior. There are stories. So the experience is the same, but what differs are like the explanation system that somebody's been raised in or bought into. So with a lot of the tales that you shared in the book too, even though it doesn't appear that there are commonalities, there are commonalities. And it'd be really interesting to focus on those commonalities and see if we can come up with yet another way of looking at the information.
Hercules, your chapter, really well done. I mean, I think you fleshed it out just fine. I mean, it's it makes some really excellent points, and what you were saying just now, and this is something that I touched a little bit, in the book, but really, I mean, we could talk about this, quite a bit, because a lot of these cases where items, material, what have you, have been found at locations where there has been a UFO encounter or multiple UFOs seen over a period of time. Some of these things would almost have the same characteristics as apports that people talk about in paranormal issues, usually associated, say, like with ghosts leaving, little trinkets and gifts behind, or some psychic mediums who are able to produce small items, usually, jewelry and things like that. One person allegedly apported themselves during the seance. So Uri Geller, now I think about it, he claimed that at one time that he accidentally apported himself from one location to another. But we see some very interesting similarities, with a lot of these cases, that this material, appears under strange circumstances in ways that there doesn't seem to be any conventional explanation. Some of them have been seen in association with UFOs flying overhead. The UFOs either explode and leave debris, or material is seen dribbling down, like molten metal seen dribbling down. This happened in South America as well. But the majority of the time that this material has been actually recovered and then examined, it's found to be just relatively mundane stuff. The one South American case I just referred to, it was tin, a molten tin that fell from the sky. I mean, there's no doubt from all the witnesses that this was something that appeared in a very bizarre fashion, yet rather than being some kind of exotic outer space material, that I think, pop culture has led us to believe, instead we're left with tin, magnesium, silicon, stuff like that can be easily found anywhere on the planet. Now, sometimes this material will have trace elements, that either shouldn't be in there, that what we know about various smelting processes, that, the types of other metals that are combined to produce, steel and iron and everything else, requires a lot of elements in to perfect them. A lot of times these elements are wildly out of proportion than what you would expect from more modern practices or even past practices. Was that Ubatuba, I think I'm pronouncing that case, Brazil situation, where the reporter was mailed an envelope full of metal that somebody claimed that a UFO had exploded over this beach, and that they and others were able to collect this debris. And this metal probably has been the most analyzed in UFO history. And it was found to be a very pure type of magnesium. But at the time that it was found, nobody really knew if there was anybody on the planet who had the capability of producing this higher grade of magnesium. It turns out that there were some laboratories in the United States that were involved with the military that were able to do this, but that was about it. Now, more recent studies, again, has found that the accompanying metals that go with this magnesium, even in the smallest of degrees, is out of proportion than what you would expect from a modern smelting. So, we have these really bizarre circumstances around this material that, for right now, for want of a better explanation, it's almost like it's appeared that they just, popped into existence and fell to the ground.
Yeah, the only message I can get from things like that is something is trying to tell us that there's more to the world than we think. That seems to be the common thread through all of it, that it challenges our sense of reality, because reality too, as we experience it, is our imagination or somebody's imagination or collective imagination of a culture over time. So it seems like something is trying to break us of these mental bonds that are keeping us stuck in the Maya or the illusion. But yeah, the pancakes too, if I remember correctly, that the pancakes also were found to be common materials. Because
it was buckwheat.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I really find fascinating too, common material, is alien implants, where when they pull them out, it has a protective biological coating around the implant.
Yeah.
And then the implant itself, it's like some kind of common metal. So that's really bizarre.
Yeah, one case, the metal was actually was a meteorite. It was like a chunk of meteorite. So now, yeah, I mean, there are, meteorites fall by the millions over the years on the planet, but what are the chances that somebody would get wedged up inside of them somehow, a little chunk of meteorite that is then surrounded, like you said, with this really unusual biomaterial that even has nerves growing out of it that connects it with the rest of the body. I know that in normal circumstances, if say, you got a piece of glass, in your foot that's been there for quite a while, it doesn't do that. I mean, your body doesn't encase it like a pearl, so to speak. There may be some, and I'm trying to think of what the correct word would this be, like, a type of white cell material that builds up around a foreign object like that, but never to the degree that's been found in a lot of these implant cases. So it's and again, it's this really bizarre situation where everybody has their hopes that they're going to go and find some, like a tiny Star Trek type of mechanical device, in these abductees, but instead find, a chunk of rock up there. And again, it harks back to these old stories of, the fairies and the wee folk that a lot of times when they would deal with people or people would deal with them, say a person would happen to steal what they thought were gold coins or jewelry from the fae. And when they get back home, instead they find they have a bag full of rocks or dung or straw or things like that. It seems almost like these modern UFO incidents are playing the very same games that the Fae played with people thousands of years ago. They've just taken on a new veneer, so to speak. People don't believe, in fairies anymore, at least for most people don't. But instead, the idea of little gray guys from another planet coming here and doing stuff to us, well, yeah, that could be possible.
In your book, there was a case in there that I'm familiar with, but I completely forgot about it. I pick up your book and I find the story about the 14-year-old guy named Hiroshi Mori, and he's holding a little tiny UFO in his hand. I remember that case. I mean, that case is so strange. What are your thoughts about that, Tim?
Yeah, I love this case, and it's a little frustrating as well because of the language difference, especially when this first occurred. It occurred in the early 1970s, so there wasn't a lot of back and forth between the various UFO groups around the world like there are now, thanks to the internet. But this case was investigated quite a bit by local UFO investigators. It just never really made it to this side of the Pacific, unfortunately. And then, follow-up cases, which did happen, I think about 15 years later. There was a documentary made, but it was never released in the United States. You can find snippets of it on YouTube, but never the full documentary. But yeah, I mean, this was the case where you had these schoolboys coming home from school, and over a fallow rice paddy, they saw this miniature. It looked like a flying saucer, flying around this field, and they would go back to this location several times, and again see this thing flying around. Sometimes it would land, and then if they got too close, it would fly away. Finally, they managed to capture it. They threw a bag over it and poured water on it. And so that's where you got that one picture of the boy holding this UFO. And it seems like that they would have it for a while, and then it would disappear. They would keep it in a box or a bag, and it would vanish, only to reappear back where they had found it in the first place. They'd capture it again, and this went back and forth a number of times. They even had like a flashlight and was able to kind of pry a little opening in it, and they said it looked like that there was complex electronics inside. They said it looked like a transistor radio inside. One of these boys' dad was a scientist for a local government in the city of Kara, Japan, and he said he regrets this. He saw it, this little UFO, and the kids wanted him to take the time to actually look more closely at it, but he thought they were just fooling around, and no, go away, kids, you bother me. But then after everything happened and all the information came out, he was just like, what's this opportunity that I missed out on? But he did confirm that what the kid said was happening was happening. He didn't see it flying around, but the kids did. Now, an interesting part of this story that didn't come until really just a couple of years ago, somebody in Japan actually discovered an old cigarette ashtray that looked exactly like this miniature UFO, even had the same designs on it and everything. It was the same size, made out of the same metal. So the conclusion was that these boys, got a hold of this ashtray and decided to hoax it all. Even though years later, when they were interviewed, all of them still stuck by their story. All the parents stuck with them and said that, yeah, we saw them running around with this thing, talking about how it was flying and that they had captured it. So, again, we're left with this perplexing story where it seems like something, to me, an outside intelligence maybe has the ability to repurpose stuff to do these weird things for whatever, it's like the old trickster stories. You have this supernatural entity that does things to, lead us forward, but at the same time having fun with us as well. And this really smacks of something along those lines.
Just like Hercules was talking about the alien pancakes, which was actually made out of buckwheat, so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of people trying to pull one on us.
John Keel called it Disneyland of the gods in one of his books, that something seems to be messing with us, and not just now, but from the dawn of time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate though, because there have been, as Paul pointed out, the Stephen Michalak case, where this was a guy, he was a prospector, he was a hobbyist, and he was out in the wilds of Canada, and this UFO landed close to him, and he made the mistake of getting too close to it. And when it took off, hot gas was expelled from a grill that was at chest level with him, and it caught his clothes on fire. And left him with what appeared to be a type of radiation poisoning. And then he had these burns on his stomach and lower abdomen that were, they looked like dots in a grid-like pattern. And according to his son, he was never completely well after this incident. These burns would, they'd fade away after a while. But then after a couple of months, he would feel sick and they would reappear again. And then he would, he'd have to go to the hospital, and his blood count would plummet. And then, years later, when investigators went to that location, they were able to find on the very same rock that this UFO was hovering over what appeared to be a radioactive metal that had been melted into the cracks of the rock that they were able to pry loose. And it actually had a significant amount of silver in it, as well as other elements. But it, after all these years, it was still pretty radioactive. So we're left with this really bizarre case of something that does have physical characteristics and can leave physical alien artifacts on people's bodies, that it's the stigmata, so to speak, UFO stigmata that lasts them for the rest of their life.
And change them in the world around them. We're talking about it now here, and how many years have passed?
That's right. That's right. Fortunately, most of these cases, they don't have, unpleasant results like this. But though, we also deal with some, apparent hoaxes, in this book as well. I mean, we can't let some of these go by. And Paul, the final chapter of the book is an article that Paul wrote, about what appeared to be an event that actually happened that then possibly somebody took advantage of later to try to perpetuate a hoax.
That sometimes people inadvertently promote hoaxes. I remember back when we were actively investigating things, we lived in Pennsylvania, and there was tale of a demonic infestation in a house. So I would give talks at libraries, and somehow it came to my attention, and called. And anyway, I brought a bunch of people with me, and one of them was an engineer who knew how hot and cold air systems worked inside a house, and knew where there'd be a furnace and an air system and so forth. And we found that where they were getting hot spots and cold spots, you could attribute it to air and heat as it's distributed through the house. They heard like a demonic growling, and I had somebody check the neighborhood. There was somebody mowing their lawn, and muffled through, like a block through the house, sounded like something like low grade growling.
Mm.
They interpreted it to be a demon, and they claimed that a demon would come sit on the furniture and on top of the house. We didn't see that while we were there. But after spending several hours there, not that I could be 100% positive that there was nothing going on, but a lot of the things that they gave in proof of there being a demonic presence were mundane things and their imagination, and who knows what their motives, the attention, or I don't know, wove these things together into a compelling story that gave some sort of meaning to what they were going through otherwise. So I dismissed it as, maybe not deliberate confabulation, but confabulation. But again, occasionally I'd hear about this demonic infestation, and the story will have grown and, mutated. Then there were some others that I couldn't explain at all. My wife is very scientific and she researches everything to that. So she's the scientist part of the relationship. And there was in Pennsylvania again, some kids had reported that something that looked like a mongoose or a badger with glowing red eyes and moved like a snake had been chased their bicycle. And so my wife tried finding any animal that might have come as a pet, that was let loose and so forth. And she came up actually with a few candidates, but it was very unlikely that it would be that in rural Pennsylvania. But then in researching this, we found out that this story goes back at least 3 generations, and really old folks had incidents of being chased by something similar. So it was inconclusive, but there was so much stories that this had happened to people, usually while running or riding a bike. That was like the commonality. And this thing, whatever it was, that slither, but it was definitely a mammal because it had like whitish silver hair, would chase them, and the glowing red eyes were a feature that people remembered. So again, there were panther sightings and things like that. Okay, those we do have mountain lions, despite what the Forest Service says. Occasionally cars hit them and you could see them. But this creature, whatever it was, I think we were calling it like the teenage mutant ninja badger or something for a while. Just to give it. So where do you draw that line? And we're at the end of the hour. I still have some time, but I know you guys are very busy. Do you want to continue for a few more minutes, or would you like to wrap up today? Paul, I'm inviting you back. Every month we have the UFO entity Enigma conversation. So, you're very articulate and you know a lot. So I think you'd make a welcome addition to those conversations.
Thank you, Hercules. Thank you. And I got to ask Tim too. There was a book out called Hair of the Alien, and it was yes, it was mentioned in Tim's book. And what was really I was blown away about is the hair was analyzed, and they found the Lahu, which was a tribe, I believe it was in China, that was part of the DNA. That was just, how did that DNA get into that hair? So I don't know. That was a really strange case.
Yeah. Go ahead, Hercules.
There are 2 really weird DNA samples that were with people who were not the way and difficult to get to places. And I believe it was pubic hairs that were found. So yeah, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, this story was covered by ufologist Bill Chalker, who wrote the book Hair of the Alien, and I mean he did a fantastic job researching this. Unfortunately, it's one of these cases that really hasn't gotten a huge amount of attention here in the United States, I think, like it should. And this involves a gentleman by the name of Peter Corey. And Peter, he happened to be home from work. He had been injured, and he was sleeping in late after his wife had gone to work. And he woke up to find that there were 2 other people in the bedroom with him. He said that he woke up and there were 2 naked females in the bed. One directly opposite of me was a blonde-looking woman, and she was sitting with her legs tucked under her. The other one on the other side was dark-haired with Asian-looking features. She said that the blonde woman appeared to be in her mid-30s with white, almost translucent skin, and her hair was thin and wispy, but was curled something like Farrah Fawcett. He said the shape of the face was long, like it was stretched out, with an extremely pointed chin. And we've heard that a lot of times before in UFO mythologies. And she also had high protruding cheekbones with a long nose. Now, he got the impression that the blonde woman was instructing the Asian looking woman on things, because he said that the blonde woman grabbed him and forced his head into her breast, and he panicked and he bit her. And he said that she looked at him and then looked at the other woman with a look almost like, well, that's not how it's supposed to be done.
And she wasn't in pain.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no, she didn't show any kind of reaction to being bit, just surprise that he reacted the way that he did. And then they disappeared. Well, when he got up, he found this a very long hair that had been wrapped around his penis. It says it was two long strands of thin blonde hair, and it was wrapped so tight that it really hurt. So he managed to get it unwrapped, and fortunately saved it, because then that's how Bill Chalker was able to get a hold of it. And as you said earlier into this conversation, they found a very unusual DNA, in this hair, revealed that it came from someone who is biologically close to normal human genetics, but of an unusual racial type. They put it a rare Chinese Mongoloid type, one of the rarest human lineages known. The other thing, and combined with this, and I get this, the DNA profiling revealed a rare Basque Gaelic type of DNA in the hair root. Okay, along with indications of the CCR5 gene deletion factor, which indicated possible viral resistance against diseases such as HIV and smallpox, which seems to show that there was some kind of genetic manipulation going on with the donor of this hair. So, this is one of these bizarre stories that, we could speculate about it endlessly and try to reach conclusions, but there really is none to be had. It's a bizarre case. There are indications of possible people who are living with us on this planet that appear to be slightly different from us genetically, and indicating a technological a genetic manipulation. So what do you make of that? Your guess is as good as mine.
It's almost like the same thing with those elongated skulls that they find in Peru.
Right.
And then they do a DNA check and it has European roots. It's like, what? Europe to Peru? What's going on here?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, these skulls, the people who had these skulls lived at a time before, as far as we know, Europe had discovered South America. So we're left with these questions of these alien artifacts that, while it would be great if we could evoke some kind of scientific principle and say, this definitively proves everything that we're talking about in one neat little package, now everybody can just go home. Of course, there's no fun in that. But what we try to point out in this book is the one thing that seems to be consistent with all of these cases is that they're all inconsistent.
And that is the great thing about this book. I'm gonna hold up my copy again. Now, as we start wrapping up, Tim, how did Zontar Press come into being?
Well, Zontar Press is, this is our attempt to try to keep the types of books and the types of writers getting out there to the public that Timothy Green Beckley was able to get together and publish books uh, uh, about and from. I mean, all of us wrote for Tim Beckley. I worked with Tim for more than 20 years. Gosh, I mean, it's 25 plus years, and always was very proud of the types of books that we were able to put out for his Interlight Global Communications publishing outfit. And Tim had this ability to bring in all of these great and oftentimes diverse writers to contribute to his books, which, I've had some people complain to me that, oh, there's too many writers in these books. There should just be, one writer with one book. But, that's, and we do books like that as well. But a book like Alien Artifact, the subject really is, I mean, there's just so much out there and so many, bizarre, strange cases that, we would be remiss if we didn't try to bring in as many people as we could to contribute with their own stories and their own information for this types of books. And I think that it makes it makes it stronger. It makes it a better book, and it makes it for more compelling reading as well. So for Alien Artifacts and the first one we put out, which had been the almost finished Dulce Warriors that we had been working on with Tim Beckley before he passed away. Now we've done Alien Artifacts, which Tim he had the idea in his head that he wanted to produce a book, and came up with a title along these lines, but that was about it. He actually very early on got some contributions from like Lon Strickler and who else is it? Oh yeah, Alejandro Rojas, and Sean had written a couple of pieces, but that was it. All right. And then Tim had put it aside because he wanted to finish or really get in and finish his book, Gray Lives Matters. It's okay to be gray, which I'm glad he did, because that was his last book and really a very well done book. So we were left with just like these little tiny pieces of what eventually would become Alien Artifacts. So I started getting hold of everybody and asking, do you want to contribute to this book? Here's what it's about. Do you have anything that, you think would work with this? And I tell you, the response is just, I'm so happy, Hercules, that, all of you, came forward with these great chapters that really make this just a strong book. Excellent reading, and I think that anybody who gets a copy will find something in it that they probably have never heard of before.
Thank you very much. And where can people pick up this book?
You can buy this book on Amazon.com. It is both print and a Kindle version. You can get your local bookstore to get a copy of it if you want to go that route. I always encourage people to go to your local bookstore and keep them in business. And if they don't have a copy, ask for it, and they'll get it for you.
And how can people contact you should they wish to explore becoming part of this band of intrepid explorers?
Yeah, you just go to my website. It's conspiracyjournal.com. I'll say that again, conspiracyjournal.com, and then it's got a place there that you can send us an email if you're interested in stuff like this, and I encourage you to do so.
Thank you very much. And Paul, how can people contact you and enter your wonderful world of strange phenomena?
Thank you, Hercules. First, I want to say thank you, Hercules, for having me on. Thank you, Tim, for inviting me. And I'm very easy to find because I do a lot of blogs. So if you just Google my name, Paul Dale Roberts, you'll find different articles that I wrote. You'll find my website on every article. You'll find my phone number on every article because my phone number is the paranormal hotline. So I'm very easy to find.
Incredibly awesome. I'd like to thank you both. I'm proud to have been part of this work and many others. And as Tim knows, this podcast and the YouTube show is dedicated to the memory of Timothy Green Beckley. Mark Brinkerhoff assures me that Tim is watching us from the Ashtar command ships. And that's a very comforting thought. So hopefully he's proud of us as well. Thank you so very much. I look forward to our next conversation, and I wish you both the best of success in all your endeavors.
Thank you so much, Hercules.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
you having us on tonight.
Okay, good night.
Good night.